We didn't plan it. We didn't even act on it. But somehow, just feeling something for him was enough to blow the whole thing up. I don't think I really noticed him until he forgot I was in the room. He'd just come back from some early morning run, all sweat and headphones and quiet muttering under his breath like he was replaying a conversation he hadn't liked. I was in the kitchen, technically their kitchen now, since he'd moved back in with her for a while after losing his job in the spring. I hadn't made any noise. I was just sitting there, half asleep, drinking coffee out of a chipped mug I always used when I stayed over. He walked in, yanked open the fridge, frowned, then said out loud to himself that she drank the last of the oat milk again. Of course she did. I should have said something, laughed it off, but I just sat there, frozen in this weird moment, not because of what he said, or even how he said it, but because for a second my whole brain short-circuited just watching his hand flex against the fridge door. Like, what the hell? This guy, of all people, was the person I'd been rolling my eyes at for the better part of 5 years. Elise's older brother. The one who wrecked about movie plots like he was writing a dissertation, or made sarcastic comments whenever I said literally anything about my major. We tolerated each other in that she's your best friend, so I guess I'll be nice kind of way. Still, I used to dread seeing him over her winter breaks. I'd hear his car in the driveway and immediately feel my social battery crawl under the couch like a dying dog. Now I was staring at his hand on the fridge. That was the moment, I guess. The first time I knew something was off with me. It hadn't felt romantic. It wasn't like butterflies or violins. It was quieter, this weird, slow burn in the chest. And I knew instantly I shouldn't say a word to anyone, especially Elise. She and I had been roommates all through undergrad, accidentally bonded over the same overpriced psychology textbook and an argument about cheese fries. We were inseparable by the end of the first semester and never really grew apart after college either. When my last relationship crumbled and I had nowhere to land, she offered her guest room with zero hesitation. And then, 2 months later, her brother moved in. That's when it all went sideways. At first, it was just awkward logistics. Sharing a space with someone who felt like a long-term sleepover guest. I stayed out of his way. He stayed out of mine. We had surface-level chats about music and mutual disgust for early mornings. I figured he was depressed about losing his job. He barely left his room and only talked freely to Elise when they'd laugh about some childhood stuff I didn't understand. But then one night we were both stuck on the couch. Elise had a late shift, it was raining, and we somehow ended up watching some stupid paranormal documentary neither of us believed. And something clicked, not in a cute way. In a fast, witty, kind of brutal back and forth that felt like sparring but didn't go too far. That night, when I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, I realized I'd heard him laugh. Like really laugh. Not snort or scoff or that bitter fake chuckle he always did. What unnerved me was how much I wanted to be the reason he did it again. So yeah, that's when it started. I told myself it was nothing. I trashed the feeling, stuffed it under mental bubble wrap, and went on existing the way I always had. But it kept poking through. In these small, dumb ways. I started noticing when his hair was styled differently, when he shaved, how he hummed to himself while unloading the dishwasher. I caught myself replaying conversations with him on the quiet nights Elise wasn't home. I'd sit in my room chewing on some dumb joke he made, wondering why it had stuck with me. It wasn't cute. It made me angry. Like, why him? He wasn't particularly nice, or stable, or even emotionally available. But he was real.
And smart.
And somehow more thoughtful than he let on. Even if he wrapped every decent word in sarcasm to keep people out. Worse, I think he knew. Not consciously, maybe. But there was a shift in the way he started looking at me, like there was some invisible conversation neither of us wanted to start, but both of us were walking towards slowly, with weird curiosity. Until the night he touched my wrist. I can't remember what we were talking about. Something pointless. Bantering again while he cooked some elaborate thing with caramelized onions. I reached to grab a spoon next to him, and he instinctively moved, not away, but toward, and his fingers skimmed over the inside of my wrist. For like a second, but it was the kind of touch that lit nerves I didn't even know could speak English. I couldn't speak either, honestly. I looked at the spoon like it had offended me. He looked at me. Not a glance. Just looked. And then Elise walked in. We both jumped like we'd been caught doing something wrong, which was ridiculous because nothing had happened, except everything had. And I swear to God, that was the last time I really relaxed in that house. After that night, I couldn't even look at my phone without flinching. I kept rereading our group text with this awful, twitchy guilt, like Elise was going to sense my spiraling just through a meme or a too long pause between replies. I nearly deleted the photo I'd taken of her brother's bookshelf the week before, just because I'd zoomed in on a shadow he was in. I mean, who even does that? Clearly someone who's about to ruin a 10-year friendship. I knew this wasn't normal. I'd never been the secret crush type. I wasn't shy about wanting things, and I'd always been fiercely loyal to the people I loved. I still am, I think. But this had started to feel like a war inside my own head. Some nights I'd practically give myself a pep talk. He's her brother. Be normal. He literally once mocked your Spotify playlist and stole your Thai leftovers. Get a grip. But the thoughts came anyway. Quieter, crueler. She doesn't even like living with him. He gets under her skin more than anything. It's not like she'd ever care if you two. No. Nope. That's how it starts, right? One selfish spiral, and suddenly you're the villain in someone else's story. I started avoiding him, took earlier showers, late-night walks. I even lied once and said I was doing laundry at a friend's just so I wouldn't be home when he got back from an interview. I was exhausting myself spinning little cage doors just so I wouldn't be alone in a room with him, which of course made it worse. Made me weird. And if there's one thing Elise notices like a bloodhound, it's when I get weird. One morning, early September, she stopped me in the hallway, toothbrush in her mouth, and said through a laugh foam voice, "You've been jumpy as hell, dude. Are you on some secret dating app again?" I laughed. Too loud. Too fast. She cocked her head. "Wait. Are you?" "No," I said, way too sharp. "God. No." She narrowed her eyes in that low-key psychic way she does. "Okay, relax," she mumbled. "Didn't know it was state secrets." She walked off before I could fix it. That was the other layer of hell, I think. I was lying by omission every single day. But the worst part wasn't even the guilt. It was how hard it was to imagine telling her the truth. Because how do you even say that? Hey, remember the brother who once fake vomited when I made you that birthday collage? Yeah. I'd let him wreck my life if he looked at me for half a second longer. I think the sickest part of all this was that I didn't even like how much I liked him. It made me feel unsafe in my own skin. I didn't want his words to matter like they did. I didn't want to memorize which nights he came home late or notice how his jaw set when he was stressed. I didn't want to need anything from someone who had never really tried to be soft around me. But need doesn't ask for permission. One night, Elise had a date and left me alone in the apartment. I saw him in the hallway, hoodie half-zipped, totally unreadable. "You okay?" he asked. Casual, but not fake. I nodded. "You?" He shrugged. "Weird week." And then, like it meant nothing, he added, "You've been kinda disappearing lately." I didn't know what to say. So I stared at the hallway light fixture like it held answers. He waited, then said softly, "Did I do something?" That broke me a little, because the truth was he hadn't. Not really. He'd done nothing wrong. He'd never flirted. Never crossed a line. If anything, he'd been decent. Annoyingly decent. Trying to be better. God, I hated this. "No," I said finally, voice tight. "It's not you." He stepped closer just an inch, but it felt seismic. "You sure?" I nodded because I couldn't speak without giving it all away. Every cell in my body was screaming, "Kiss me or leave. Just do one or the other before I lose my mind." But he didn't. He just looked at me like he knew, and hated knowing. And then, like a switch flipped, he stepped back and muttered, "Okay, good night." I barely made it to my room before I collapsed against the door. After that, I did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled temp listings and sublets. just to look. It felt like cheating, like planning an escape without telling Elise. But the thought kept hammering my skull. The longer I stayed, the higher the odds I'd wreck something sacred. Then came the real quake. It was a Thursday. Elise came into my room in a whirlwind with leftover pad thai and this manic gleam in her eyes. "Oh my God," she said, mouth full. "So, Marcus is talking to someone." I blinked. "Wait. Who?" "My brother, duh." She grinned. "Apparently this girl from that dumb kickball league added him on Insta last week, and they've been meng. Like, a lot." Something slipped sideways in my chest. Oh, right? He didn't even say anything to me until today. I had to squeeze it out of him. Isn't that wild? I nodded numbly. Yeah, kind of. Elise kept ranting, smiling like it was nothing. I stared at the floor, chewing on grief like it owed me something. The idea of him choosing anyone who wasn't me shouldn't have stung like it did. But it did. Oh, God, it did. And the worst part? Some buried, bitter corner of me wanted him to stay single. Not happy. Just on hold. For me. Even though I had no claim. That's when I finally admitted it. I didn't just want him. I liked him. As a person. As a connection. As something slowly undoing me. And I was too much of a coward to do anything but rot silently in the discomfort. He asked if I wanted coffee. That's how the whole thing unraveled. It was a Sunday morning, a week after I found out about the girl from kickball, who, by the way, had athletic freckles and a voice like cinnamon gum from what Elise said. Not that I stalked her profile, or anything. I hadn't seen him much that week. Just the usual hallway passing and polite nods. Like we were co-workers who went through a weird office party moment and were now pretending we didn't remember the slow dance part. So when I walked into the kitchen that morning and he was already there, pouring hot coffee into a chipped blue mug, I froze. "Hey," he said, glancing over like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't been dreaming in half confessions and guilt-swallowed silence. "Made extra." "Want?" I did. I really did. But all I could say was, "Sure." And try not to sound like I was accepting a high-stakes proposal. His hand brushed mine as he passed it, and I'm not proud of this, but I held my breath like a middle schooler. And then he sat down. Across from me. No phone, no book, just sitting. We didn't say anything at first, and to be fair, I didn't trust myself with words. I was afraid if I opened my mouth even a little, it would all come pouring out. The feelings, the nights I couldn't sleep, the way I hated and needed him in equal measure. The way I wanted him to stop talking to the kickball girl, even though she had done 0 things wrong. He was the first one to break the silence. "I ended it," he said, looking at the counter like it owed him an apology. I blinked. "Ended what?" He rolled the mug between his palms and swallowed something invisible. Whatever that thing was. With the girl. From the league. Something in me both relaxed and tensed at the same time. "Oh." He nodded. "Yeah. Wasn't fair to lead her on when my brain was somewhere else." Then, after a moment, softer, like it could fall apart midair, he said, "Someone else." My stomach dropped through the floor. I didn't ask. He didn't say. It hung there between us, humming like bad static. And then he looked at me, really looked, and I swear something inside me cracked. "Does Elise know?" I said. I don't even know why that came out. It was like some last breath reflex, trying to steer us back to loyalty before it was too late. He actually laughed, sad and small. "No. She's got enough to worry about." I didn't want to make things worse. "Worse," I echoed, hollow. He leaned back, looked out the window. "Yeah, worse. Because she trusts me. And she loves you. Like, more than anyone. And he trailed off. I'm the guy who never stays in one place. Who ghosts when things get boring or hard. She's always known that about me." He didn't say it, but I heard the rest. "She would never forgive me if I broke you." We sat in that quiet a long time. And then, in the smallest voice I've ever used like it was made of glass, I said, "I don't want to hurt her." He nodded, voice gone flat. "Neither do I." And we both knew we were lying. Not that we wanted to hurt her, but that we already had. Even if nothing happened. Even if we folded this thing back into the walls forever. The damage was already done because my heart had already chosen sides. And so had his. The moment passed. He stood, mug in hand, and looked down at me like maybe this was goodbye. Not loud, not final, just quiet surrender. But as he turned to leave, I reached out and caught the hem of his flannel like a reflex.
He stopped.
And, God help me, I asked the question I'd buried under months of shame. Do you think she'd hate me? He turned back so slowly, I almost retracted the words. But he didn't laugh. He didn't deflect. He just bent slightly so we were eye level and said, I think if she knew how long I've been trying not to feel this. His voice cracked. She'd just hate me more. I couldn't breathe. It felt like all the oxygen in the room had been sucked up by the truth. Then we did the stupidest, bravest thing we could have done. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch again at all. We talked. For 2 hours. Sitting knee to knee, untangling every moment, every silent glance we tried not to mean, every dumb emotional shortcut that led us here. For the first time, I think I heard him, not just what he said, but where it came from. I understood the bruised parts of him, the parts that pulled back even when they wanted to move closer, and he saw the mess I'd been hiding under all my loyalty and moral math.
We didn't end up together that day.
Nothing got wrapped up in a neat little bow. But something shifted. Eventually, we told Elise. I wish I could say it went smoothly. It didn't. Her face went blank. Then she laughed. Then she didn't. Then there were days when she barely looked at me, and I couldn't blame her. I'd feel the same if she'd fallen in love with someone who shared my worst childhood memories. But over time, the sharpness dulled. She didn't say it, but I think she saw that it wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't a secret we kept because it was dirty. It was something we didn't understand in ourselves, something that unraveled slowly, like careful threads pulled one by one. She forgave me. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe she just chose not to lose me. And that's enough. As for him, we're not dating. Not officially. Not anything you could put a label on without it twitching. But I've slept next to him twice since it all came out.
And he didn't run.
And I didn't flinch. And for now, that small, imperfect peace is more than I ever thought I'd get.
So yeah.
I don't know if this ends in love. Or heartbreak. Or just a beautiful, private ruin. But I know it didn't come easy. And it wasn't clean. And maybe that means it's real.